Okay, good.
Quote, quote.
Okay, we are learning the Sefer Yetzira, and we've learned the first two Mishnayos, and I would like to review them because tonight I'm going to share a commentary on the Sefer Yetzira from the Ramak, from Moshe Cordovero in the Pardes Rimonim, and we're going to follow him. He brings a midrash, and I'm going to bring a Mishnah. And I want to conclude my lesson this evening with a meditation. I'm going to teach you a meditation which I personally use. I think it's really deep into Chazal, so I'm looking forward to sharing with you. So I begin with first two Mishnayos of Sefer Yetzira.
The sound just changed.
Um, I'll tell you what I
The,
see. I see.
the volume is down and it's
Yeah, it became a little tinny, but
a
we can hear you.
little.
My speaker is from my headset, and so same as headphones. Okay, I could try this. Is that better or the same?
More or less the same.
Okay. Um,
But I think we can manage, right? Right, Steve? We can manage.
okay. So here we go. B'shleishim nesivos pliyos chachma chakak Yudkei Hashem Yudkei Vavkei Tzvakos Elokei Yisrael Elokim Chayim Melech Olam Kelshakai Rachum Mechanun Ramanisa Shoichin Ad Maro Mekadosh Shmoi Ubara Esoy Lamo. God, in all those names, created his world. B'shleisha Sfarim, B'Sefer, B'Sapar, B'Sipur, with three linguistic tools, counting, writing, and speech. Mishnah Beis, Eser Spherois Belima. Be'esrim Ushtaim Oisiois, 22 letters, Yesod, Shaloshimot, Sheva Kvulot, V'Shtemetzrei Pshutot. There are three mothers, 7 double letters, and 12 simple letters. Obviously, and I must say it's true about the whole Sefer Yetzira, it's hard to understand. Okay, it's deep and hidden, but it doesn't mean it's unintelligible. So I've told you that Arya Kaplan offers great insights. Tonight I'm sharing from the Pardes Rimonim, which is the Ramak, Moshe Cordovero, who was in Sfat. He was one of the great men who received smicha when they renewed the smicha in Sfat in the 1500s. And his Sefer, the Pardes Rimonim, sort of like an encyclopedia of Kabbalah. He's like putting things together and explaining them, bringing different opinions and trying to set things straight. And so it's very readable. It's a really helpful sort of reference book. Anyway, he's talking about these nativot, these pathways of wisdom. And in order to cut to the chase, I'm starting right here. Lachein hagirsa yoter nechonami toshevet etzenu b'mishnah k'mo she'etak v'vala ve'ata navo b'biora. Now let's explain the Mishnah and Sefer Yetzira. The Lamed Beis Nesibois, 32 pathways. Inyana nitivot eile heim b'chochma. These 32 pathways are in the realm of chochma. We know chochma, bina, v'da'as. Sometimes there's the word tavuna, but chokhmah is a specific one. Psukim like that God created the world with chokhmah, the chokhmah yisad aretz. So the 32 pathways that we're talking about are called the Lamed Beis Nesivos HaChokhmah, 32 paths of wisdom. V'omnam mitziut chilukam vadai al derech ila ve'alul. And this is a new idea that we hadn't seen until now, that these 32 pathways, each one leads to the next. Like number one is the cause, the source, root existence of number two. And two is the cause and root existence of number three. Ki'ilu ne'amar hanasiv harishon ila el habeis, ve'habeis el hashlishi, ve'hashlishi el haravi'i. So that we didn't know that. There could have been 32 pathways, like there's 32 main streets in the city, and all roads lead to Rome. But here we're learning that these paths of wisdom are like descending, And the one leads to the second, and the second leads to the third, and the third to the fourth, and so forth. V'zeu minyanam, v'chilukam al derech shebiarnu b'sharches, the 620 amudei or shebekeser. So remember, we're talking now about Chochmah, which is the second of the spheros. The first of the spheros is Keser. So Keser, you can see that the gematria of Keser is 620, Taf Reish Chaf, 620. And so there's a number 620, Taf Reish Chaf, which are called pillars of light, which are associated with Keter, okay? So we're now learning certain numbers are associated with certain realms, with certain spheroids. 620 pillars of light associated with Keter, 32 paths of wisdom associated with Chochmah. We're familiar with Nun, Chamishim, 50 Share Bina, okay? So these are different Kabbalistic structures and paradigms associated with these different realms of knowledge, wisdom, data, understanding, analysis, okay? Ve'en safek shenetivot ha'elu him drachim v'tzinorot. Without doubt, these pathways should be understood as channels of influx, pipelines. Tzinorot are pipes. Tzinorot el hashefa. Ve'hem mekorot haba'im michochma el habina. And now we're learning that these 32 paths of wisdom are coming from Chochmah, and they're pipelines down to Bina. And Rav Aryeh Kaplan explains very beautifully that if we think of Chochmah as like data, and Bina is analysis of it. So, and there's a Zachar Nekeva, there's a male-female relationship between them. So you have this stuff that like the man brings into the house. Let's say a man catches a fish, okay? He brings a fish into the house. And mommy fries it in the pan. She takes out the kishkas and she turns it into dinner, okay? There's certain role play between the man brings some stuff and the woman takes it and turns it into something usable. The same way with the seed. A man brings a seed, a woman takes it into her body and turns it into a baby, okay? So there's a certain partnership of Zachar Nekeva. And so to here, we have it in this way, okay? Between Chochmah and Bina. So, okay. Ve'ein safek shenesivos ha'elu drachim mitzinos me'achochmah labina. Ki sham hanesivos k'mevor b'tikunim v'malkos. V'lechein hi nikra kvoid she'oila k'minyan hanesivos ha'shofim v'kein nikra lamed beis al shmam. Derech nesivos ha'elu nifalu kol ma'aseh bereishis k'demuchak b'minyan elokim shehim lamed beis asher niva'er. So I mentioned this, and I want to show it to you now. It says the Shem Elokim, Bereshis Bar Elokim, 32 times in the story of creation. And that's important enough that the Pardes, the Ramak, he actually counts them out, and he goes through all 32 of them. So with your permission, I'd like to quickly run through and show you the 32 Shemois Elokim in Ma'aseh Bereshis. Bereshis bara Elokim, Beruach Elokim merachefet, Vayomer Elokim yehi or, Vayar Elokim esa or, Vayavdel Elokim ben or ben choshech, Vayikra Elokim leor yom, Vayomer Elokim yehi rakia, Vayas Elokim esa rakia, Vayikra Elokim lerakia shamayim, Vayomer Elokim yikavu amayim, Vayikra Elokim liyabasha eretz, Vayar Elokim kitoiv, Vayomer Elokim tadshei haaretz, Vayar Elokim kitoiv, Vayomer Elokim yehi ma'oros, creation of the heavenly bodies. Vayas Elokim es shnei ma'oros, v'yiten otam Elokim b'rkiya shamayim. Vayar Elokim kitoiv, Vayomer Elokim yishutzu amayim, vayivra Elokim es ataninim, Vayar Elokim kitoiv, vayivarach hoysam Elokim, Vayomer Elokim totzei haaretz, Vayas Elokim es chayes haaretz, Vayar Elokim kitoiv, Vayomer Elokim nase Adam, Yivra Elokim es Adam, B'tselem Elokim barauto, Yivarach Hoysam Elokim, Vayomer lahem Elokim pruervu, Vayomer Elokim hine natati, and the 32nd, the last one is Vayar Elokim eskol asher asa v'hine tov ma'od. And from there it goes into Shabbos. So one of the lessons that we're learning tonight is that the relationship between these 32 Shemos in the Maaseh Bereshis, one leads to the other. And so, like the whole process of creation, we have a sense that it builds on itself. God is building the building blocks of creation when he starts with Or v'choshech, light and darkness, and he creates the water and divides the water and so forth until you get to fish and birds and ultimately people. So it's a building process through these 32 pathways of wisdom, which are alluded to in these 32 iterations of the Shem Elokim.
It's all Midat Adin.
Yafeh. It's a good point you're making, Shimon. Which let's describe that as setting things up in their boundaries, right? Not in like a cruel, judgmental way, but in a way, these are the rules. Everything comes with its instruction manual. Everything has the set of orders by which it functions, which we know Elokim, the gematria Hateva, nature. So this is God's, the natural God, the God of nature as the expression of the will of God, and he's creating all these creatures, each one according to a system, and they're like pre-programmed to do what they're supposed to do. Okay. The last piece that I wanted from the Ramak this evening was that, okay, that he has them coming down from Chochmah all the way down to Malchus, okay? We say that. Umisham nimshachim bedakut ada malchus. Milamed beis el lamed beis ada malchus she chochma tata. There's a certain relationship between chochma el yoina, the second of the spheros, and malchus, the last of the spheros, which he refers to as lower wisdom. And those are, and he's saying like there's a correspondence of 32 pathways up in chochma and 32 pathways down in malchus. And that's where like action comes from. And here, look what he says now. V'hu ha'adrichal. This is the architect. Okay? So Shimon just mentioned Midat Hadin. And think of an architect. An architect has like drafting tools. He has a compass. I mean, today it's all computerized. But an adrichal, an architect, uses measurements to plan and set out how things are going to fit together. So the Ramak uses the mashal here of an adrichal, an architect, Hanizkar b'maaseh bereshis, Pirshu Razal, in Bereshis Rabbah, chapter 27. So this is to me, this is one of the beautiful things about Kabbalah, where it takes very high ideas of us in search of the divinity and how divinity works, and it brings us a very earthly model of an architect, okay? Which is like, wow, we still have architects today, and they've known about architecture since the ancient world. And so I have here the Bereshis Rabbah, and it's reference to an architect, okay? At the beginning, in the first 20 generations of mankind, they were wicked, from Adam to Noach and from Noach to Abraham. And God gets seemingly frustrated with them. The Yisatsev el libo. Okay, he's like saddened to his heart, and which is theologically difficult. How does God get sad and disappointed? Putting that aside, Amar Brechia, Mashal Lesar, Shebana Paltin al Yirei Adrichal. How should we understand the pasuk of V'yisatzev el libo? We should think of the metaphor of a minister, a powerful person, a sar, and he built a palace, and he has an architect. Ra'a ota v'lo arvalo. He sees the palace and he thinks, that's not to my taste. Al mi yesh lo leitkaes. On whom should he get angry? Lo al adrichal. He's disappointed in the work of the architect. Kach v'yisatzev libo. So this is how Chazal in the Midrash are referring to this pasuk v'yisatzev libo. Libo is the architect. Now notice the word libo is the lamed base, the lev. Okay, so we're taking the lev, the heart, and we're saying that corresponds to these 32 paths of wisdom. And we're now linking Chokhmah, which we probably would have put up in the right hemisphere of the brain, but now we're associating it with the heart. And there's a certain disappointment here in creation because man has gone sour and disappointed God. And God's anger is focused on the Adrichal, the architect. And who is this architect? It's Libo. It's the Lamed Beis Nesivos HaChokhmah. So there's a certain disappointment here in like the whole system, which, you know, we saw today that it started from 620 pillars of light up in Keter, and now there's these 32 paths of Chokhmah. But ultimately, there's a failure, and the failure causes v'yisatzev el libo, a certain disappointment in what's happened. So we saw this adrichal. Oh, and I need one more point from the Pardes, okay? And that is the following. V'lachein yesh korim lechokhmah golem lefi shehu chomer noseh kol hatzurot sheba'olam. Another aspect of chokhmah, and we've mentioned this before, is it's the letters of koach ma, like any bit of force or of data, okay? It's koach ma, some iota of power. And here he says this wisdom is like stuff it's like a material. And again, we're not saying a physical material, but spiritual material that could bear any form. V'chein oleh, and he's relating it to the word golem. Now, I want to talk about the word golem here a little bit extensively. One meaning of the word golem is where a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. In English, what do we call that place? A cocoon, okay, in the cocoon. And there's a life cycle, stages of the life cycle of a caterpillar. He wraps himself in his silk cocoon and he becomes a butterfly. And so that cocoon is called a golem, okay, because it's an unfinished object. And in Hebrew, referring to raw materials, they're called chomrei gelem. Okay, again, raw materials, unprocessed stuff is called chomrei gelem. There's a term in Mishnaic Hebrew called golmei kelim, unfinished vessels. Like a vessel before you polished it or sanded it or painted it. It's a wooden vessel or a metal vessel. And we have a halacha that golmei kelim einam mekablim tumah. They're incomplete. They haven't been finished. So it's not a proper vessel. Okay? And so here, the Pardes is connecting the word chokhmah to the word golem, which again means raw, unfinished substance. L'chein yesh korim lechokhmah golem, lefishu chomer noseh kol hatzurot sheba'olam. You can turn it into anything. It's unfinished. It's raw material. It's the raw material of creation. It's like atoms or subatomic particles from which you could create anything. V'chein oleh 73. Chokhmah, you can see the gematria here is 73. And golem is also 73. So there's a certain duality, a certain connection between chokhmah and golem, meaning raw material, unfinished stuff, and chokhmah, koach ma, like a bit of energy. Perush heyuli. The Ramban introduces us to this Greek word for sort of, you know, the most spiritual, ethereal idea for material existence, that it can be turned into anything. It's called Hiyuli Noseh Kol Hatzurot Sheba'olam. Vezeu kavanat HaMishnah, Omram Belamed Beis Nesibos Chochma Chakak et Olamo. So Hashem used this very ethereal, primal stuff called Chochma, called Golem, Hiyuli, and turns it into everything that exists. Okay, so it's a stage in the development of existence. And where I want to go now is a Mishnah in Avot about a golem. Okay, we know about the golem of Prague, and the reason that's called a golem is because he's like an unfinished person. He's a person who doesn't have the power of speech, so he's like a golem. But I'm reminding you of this Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. We're learning Pirkei Avos now in preparation for Kabbalah Satira. So in the 5th parak, we have Shiva Dvarim Begoylem, Shiva Bechacham. So it's really important that the Mishnah here juxtaposes the Chacham with the Golem. And to me, that stems from what we just learned in the Pardes, that the word Chochma and Golem have the same gematria, and they're both come from sort of the same place of being this raw material of creation. And yet there's someone called a Chacham, who is like a whole person, who's complete, we'll see, in his midot and in his intellect and his behavior. And there's a Goylem, who will call him generously work in progress. He's unfinished, okay? He's certainly unpolished. He's worse than that. But so let's see the Shiva Dvarim Begoylem B'Shiva B'Chacham. Chacham eino medaber b'fnei mishu gadol mimenu b'chachma b'minyan. A wise person doesn't speak in front of others who are wiser than him. Ve'eino nichnas l'toch divrei chavero. He doesn't interrupt somebody. Eino nivhal lehavshiv. He's not in a hurry to answer. Shoel kinyan meshiv kalacha. He asks relevant questions. He gives fair answers. Ve'oimer al rishon rishon aval achron achron. His mind is orderly. He speaks, he addresses the first issue and then the last issue. And on things he doesn't know, Val Masha lo shama, Omer lo shamati. I don't know. He's not embarrassed or too proud to admit that he doesn't know everything. Umoide la emes, he admits the truth. And the opposite of all those things, chilufeihem begolem. Okay? So we have two characters here, the Chacham and the Golem. The Chacham is a wonderful person. He's intellectual, and he's orderly, and he's self-controlled. He has mastery over himself, and the Golem is the opposite. So I've opened the Perush Rambam on this Mishnah, and he's talking about different characters. He talks about the Ama'aretz. An Ama'aretz we would translate as an ignoramus. He says an Ama'aretz is a ish, sheyesh lo mailos hamidos. He may have a decent character, aval ein lo malot sichliot, but he's unlearned, so his intellectual development is lacking. Ritzono lomar sheyesh lo derech eretz ve'ein biyado Torah. Unikra ma'aretz, but shalomar shu toiv liyishuv ha'aretz. The kibutzei hamadinot mivnei sheyesh lo malot hamidot. He could be a good guy to serve certain functions for society, but he's not learned. What about a golem? Who is a golem? A golem hu ish, sheyesh lo ma'alot sichliot, u'ma'alot hamidot. He has advantages also of the mind and of his character. Omnam einam shlemot, but they're incomplete. V'lo hol chois al seder k'ro'oi, and so he has severe character flaws. Aval yesh bem irbuvia bilbulim v'tarev bem chisaron. So his character is messed up, and there's severe problems. He's like an unfinished vessel. Asher yaseu uman, the craftsman makes a vessel, but he hasn't yet completed it. V'tiyebo hatzura hamalachit shechasreu hashlama, unfinished business. Atikun kisakin v'sayaf sheaseh hanapach golmim. V'giya lehem tzuratam kodem sheyashchizem like a sword or a knife that's being made by a blacksmith, but he has yet to sharpen it. So it has the basic form. You could see it's going to be a knife or a sword, but it's not sharp yet, so it doesn't really work. That's like a golem, unfinished character. He has a certain amount of intelligence and a certain amount of personality and virtue, but unfinished and incomplete. Okay, and then the Chacham is someone who has completed the work. Chacham hu ha'ish shegiu lo shnei haminim min hamaylos ala shlemut v'lo shetzarich. So the Chacham has shlemut hamidot and shlemut hasichliot. He's a complete and whole adult, both in issues of mind and intelligence, as well as in character. So years and years ago, I had an idea, which I believe is a true idea, about a certain meditation. And what does it mean that this person is incomplete? What process is he incomplete in? And I got the idea that the process is from turning himself, his ani, aleph nun yud, into ayin, recognizing that he's nothing. Okay? The same three letters, aleph, nun, yud, ani, can be rearranged to be aleph, yud, nun. And it's about a person who grows up and matures and realizes, instead of my egocentric self where I'm everything and it's all about me, I realize I'm really nothing, and I'm really created to God, who God is called Ein Sof. God is called Ein Mazali Yisrael. Hayesh Hashem b'kirbenu im ayin. So Aleph Yud Nun is a very high word of nothingness, of God's presence in this world as being invisible, and so forth. And so a Chacham can complete that work on himself and realize, Ich bin garnished, I am nothing, okay? And that work, that contemplation of Ani ayin, I am nothing, okay? That takes time to work. There's the famous joke about a bacher who gets to a Musar yeshiva, and he's there, and he says, oh, it's been garnished, it's been garnished. And they say, you just got to yeshiva 2 weeks ago, you think you're already garnished? So it's not easy to turn yourself into garnished, into ayin. But I finished my idea with the Mishnah in Brachos. The Mishnah in Brachos says, Ein oimdim lispalel el mitoich koived rosh. Hasidim harishonim hayu shoyin sha'achas umispalalim kedei sheyichavnu libam lemakom. So it's the first Mishnah in the fifth parak of Brachos, and it says one should not stand to pray the Shemona Esrei until you have sufficient gravitas. El mitoch kovid rosh. You're in the right mood to daven. And the Hasidim Rishonim, the ancient pious ones of old, would spend an hour getting in the mood. And the Gemara says they would spend an hour beforehand and an hour in their prayer, and then an hour afterward decompressing from their spiritual experience. But my analysis, my insight, is to note what's the first word of this chapter. What's the first word of the Mishnah? Ein. Ein oimdim lispalel al mitoch koved rosh. So my idea, and what I try to put into practice from time to time, as you're waiting for davening to begin, in Shachris, you're sort of in gear, as you've davened Psukei Zimra, and Birkas Kriyat Shema, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, more brachas, Baruch Hashem Gol Yisrael. And you begin your Shemona Esrei, you've had 15 or 20 minutes to sort of get into Kovid Rosh, into the right frame of mind for davening. But Mincha is much shorter. It's just Ashrei, and you hit it. And so sometimes you get to shul a few minutes early. And how should you use that time? So I propose one of the things you can do with your time to prepare for prayer properly is think about this Mishnah, ein omdim lispalel el mito koved rosh. And this word ein, aleph yud nun, is really a pathway or a key to think about aleph yud nun, which is really me, ani. It's me, but instead of the egocentric version of myself, everything, it's all about me and what I want to ask for. There's a nullification, a self-nullification, a bittul hayesh, okay? Taking myself and realizing, ich bin garnished, I'm really nothing. Ani, ayin. And to think about the beauty of those letters, Aleph, Yud, and Nun, ayin, and connect up to a Kadosh Baruch Hu that's Ein Sof. And then you're ready to stand in prayer and to pray for Kiddush Hashem, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will reveal himself in this world and his will be fulfilled and so forth. So that was my goal this evening, to share with you this meditation, going from Ani to Ayin, of Ein Omdi Lispal Mitoch Koved Rosh. We learned about these 32 paths of wisdom, that they're sequential paths from Chokhmah to Bina, and all the way down to Malchus Tata, to the lower level of bringing things into fruition, into actuality in the Bria. And these processes behind the scenes are, I'll call them metaphysical processes, and we're able to get a little bit of a glimpse of them, that they exist, through the Mishnayos here of the Sefer Yetzira. So that's why I feel that it's worthwhile learning, and there's what to get from it. So, Steve, something?
It was an old country and western song called "I'm Just an Old Hunk of Coal, but I'm Gonna Be a Diamond Someday."
Beautiful. Okay, great. Great. Sushta. Great addition to what we're talking about. I'm just a hunk of coal, but someday I'll be a diamond. I like that. Thank you. Okay, gentlemen. Yes.
Yes,
Bruchim to you. Thanks for being here. Good night.
Good night. Good night.